Welcome to Anna's and Lucian's Homestead Kitchen Show. I'm going to show you how to make some very simple sauerkraut. To preserve cabbage. Cabbage is so abundant. It grows in the fall. Sometimes it can overwinter, and then even well into the spring and the beginning of the summer. So we're in the high desert here. We can grow it basically only in the cold during the cold season. It gets pretty hot in the summer, so the cabbage would possibly bolt if it didn't produce a head. But that's another story, another gardening story. This is one of the simplest. I've learned it in a workshop. I've seen, kind of like step by step, but I've seen my grandparents. That's right. So I saw my grandparents do this quite a lot. What they did, they had this big wooden barrels, sometimes plastic also. They had it in a dark place in their pantry. The pantry was a walk-in pantry. And what they did, they just mixed water with salt. Sometimes they put some dill and or other herbs, but not very flavorful, really light herbs in there. And many times I've seen, in some cases, they will put some soil from the garden in a sock and put it inside of that mixture of salt and water and some of the herbs. Sometimes, okay, so that was so that, we have like all this beautiful kind of like bacteria kind of trying to make it in that salt water there. So salt water is kind of like inhibiting a lot of the bad bacterial interaction that would actually consume entirely and basically make a compost brew out of this. And sometimes people also put corn mash in it. That also helps with some bacteria movement. But I'm not even gonna go into that. I'm doing like sauerkraut. Okay. So grandparents, after they mixed all of that liquid in there, they left it for a day, possibly sitting there. Then they just basically put cabbage exactly like this, like full cabbage in there, and it would just become such a good, amazing, preserved, tasty cabbage for the winter. So in Romania, basically they would grow it into late fall. Okay. So they also what they also did with that, they would peel it off and use it to make this kind of like how the Greeks make the dolmas with a grapevine. The Romanians would make it with the cabbage. So put like a mixture, either like something that was like vegan or a mixture of meats in there during the winter, during the Christmas, and make it kind of like a dolma kind of looking. Okay, so for what I'm about to show you, a simple sauerkraut, here's what you need. I'm going to do two kinds. I'm going to do red cabbage and green cabbage. I'll tell you the difference a little bit, not in technique necessarily, but the time and then also the taste, of course. So red cabbage may take a little bit longer to actually get to be the yummy, its yummiest potential. So what you need some small heads like this of cabbage. You want some like really dense cabbages, okay? You want a big bowl. Sometimes I don't even use a big bowl like this, but I just wanted to show you kind of like a technique to make it easier on yourself. Kosher salt, coarse kosher salt, a knife, a cutting board, and one of these things. What is this called?
A crock.
It's called a crock, okay? So this is a crock here, pretty heavy ceramic with a lid that's kind of like loose to the top, because during the fermentation time you kind of like want it to want some of the gases to be released. And I'll also show you I think you brought them, right? Did you bring me some jars? I'll show you in the jar. Okay, beautiful. So you'll be my assistant for today. You also need a tool like this. You could do it with a hand for sure, but this would make it like really easy. This is going to make it easy. You can do it just with a hand, but this is going to make it really easy. I'll show you in the jar also, okay? What you also need a beverage, because this is going to take some time. some good beer or wine. Don't get too drunk, okay? So the first thing that I'm gonna do, oh, you also need a compost bucket or a chicken bucket. So this is what goes to the compost or to the chickens to eat, okay? That's very important because we don't want to waste any of these. We don't want to send them to the landfill. This is beautiful stuff that's going to go to the chickens. They're going to eat them. They're going to make good eggs and nice poop for our farming operation. So the first thing that I'm doing, I'm going to peel the top layer off. We had these in the fridge actually because I was supposed to do this earlier, but we had them in the fridge for a little bit. So the top layer is either like a little dirty or possibly, you know, let's see, oh, great. Or it gets kind of like mushy and stuffed in the fridge, okay? So we're not wasting anything. This does not go to waste. This is going back into the cycle of nature. You'll notice that maybe there are some blemishes still on it, but we'll take it off with a knife later. So I'll start with this one that we made a little salad earlier. And I'm going to carve a little bit of the, you know, stuff that kind of got yucky in the fridge. And then you can also cut this like, and I like some of the hard parts in my kraut too. You can cut it in so many ways. By the way, you know, the good bacteria that's gonna kind of work in there to make this into sauerkraut already exists on the cabbage itself. And there might be some bad bacteria too, but that bad bacteria can actually go bye-bye during the fermentation process, okay? Unless you're doing it wrong. So here's how I'm cutting it. It's not a big science, you know. You can have the cabbage be, you know, just like this, how I'm cutting like these big pieces, and then, you know, you have kind of like bigger pieces of kraut. When you're eating it, you can actually chop it even further. I kind of like it this size, like this, and then it kind of like opens itself, right? So I'm just gonna do it like this. You know, the smaller it is, the difference between small and big pieces is that you're gonna get a specific type of taste too, okay? So I can definitely do two different ones. So maybe I'll do two different ones. But I like it bigger pieces like this. There's another thing that's happening. The smaller you cut it, the softer that sauerkraut may be too. All the pieces, they may kind of like cook in there if you want to call it. So this is my style of doing it. And you'll see the end product. See the hard part here, I'm going to cut them a little bit smaller. They're still going to be pretty crunchy, okay? I mean, it looks like we have so much cabbage right now. Like, wow, we're going to have so much sauerkraut. But that's not the case, and you're going to see soon. I love the taste of this cabbage. You know, the hard part really tells you kind of sometimes some people are able to even say what kind of cabbage this was or when was it grown. Was it grown in the summer? I mean, not in the summer, but in the fall. Was it grown in the winter towards spring? So when it's spicy like this, it was basically started in fall. Okay, so now we're gonna have quite a lot in here. So I'm gonna do just by hand actually. So here we are, we have kind of like a handful. Okay. I think I'm gonna do 2 handfuls. You can never make it too salty. Okay? So the first thing that I'm doing, and you're gonna notice something when you're mixing like this in cabbage. You gotta be very careful. Cabbage can get under your nails, and it can actually really hurt you. So you want to be kind of like gentle when you're mixing this. Some people, and I've done it before, where you're just gonna suffer through it. You can be a little bit harder, but there is a technique. So try not to basically just stick your nails in there, because again, it could get stuck under your nails and it can hurt. So I'm just gonna take it like, I'm gonna grab it lightly, quote unquote, and then like squeeze. Okay. I'm not hurting her right now, even though I'm squeezing pretty hard. She's like, I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready to do something so much better. Okay. So you could do this quite for a while if you want to, but it could take a long time if you do it like this to get to what you actually want. So you know when you're looking in a kraut, you see all that liquid. There's no water added. All that liquid comes from the cabbage, and we're squeezing the heck out of it right now, okay? So you may actually feel, as you're starting to do this, that there's more moisture than when you first touched the cabbage, okay? No pun intended there. Do it until you're gonna start not feeling that salt on your hands anymore, or you can't see it. I didn't even put that much salt right now. You observe, right, that I didn't wash them. You could if you wanted, but I don't wash them because I want some of that good stuff that was on them there. These are organic, of course. And so now, here's the test to know if I put enough salt. I'm gonna put more, but just to start with. So if it's super salty anywhere you taste from, then you put some good amount of salt in there, okay? Now, you can keep on doing this. You can even use your fist and do this, but you can see that you can create accidents and lose some of your goodness in here by doing this. And that's why we have that little crock and we have that little tool, okay? Okay. Here we are. It's completely empty. There was a little water in there, but not that much, but just that much. I just washed it. So I'm gonna put this in here. There's not that much. It's like 3/4. So, you know, back in the day in Mother Romania, we used to do it like this with a fist first. So I got it all the way at the end. Can you hear that? We already have moisture in there. So no water added, no anything. Look, it's completely almost dry. There's a little bit of juice in there. This is why I have this tool. So I'm gonna beat it up. Now you understand why I didn't cut it even smaller than this. Because while I'm doing this, it actually breaks down a lot of the pieces way smaller. So usually you want something that's way wider than this. And you see that was just like a cabbage and 3/4, so it did about 1/3. So I would say that with these 3 here, maybe we'll get this like, you know, 3/4 to almost full. So it definitely reduces in size. So I've done it a lot with a wooden spoon like this. As you can tell, like, you know, there's not that much more surface. Possibly this one won't catch as much. But you can do it with this type of spoon too. I like to compress it again with my fists. There's like a lot of juice already. That's all cabbage juice. So you'll get it to a point where it would actually cover the entire, like all the cabbage that you got in here. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Look at all that juice in there right now. Look how much we got. See, it's covering the cabbage. That's what we want. It's about a little bit over halfway, and that's with how many cabbages did I put so far? I think 3.5. Okay, so 6 cabbages. We got a full, what is that? Let me see, 1 gallon? What does this say? Is this a 1 gallon, basically? Yeah, it's a 1 gallon. 1 gallon of sauerkraut right here. So you saw how I mixed in the beginning until the salt kind of disappeared and it started to be kind of like moist. And then you saw how the first batch that I put on the bottom, I beat up, or I don't even know what other word I can use. I pressed way more than the next layers. And that's the one that started to make all of that juice from the cabbage, okay? And then after that, all I did, I just basically, I kind of like mashed a little bit more on the second one, but by the third one, there's so much juice in there that I didn't have to do it. Look at all this juice from the from the cabbage itself. Okay, so you see how much it is. So now we're gonna go outside and find a rock. That's how we did it traditionally in Romania. A rock to keep this cabbage submerged in that juice and not have too much of it to the surface, because what we got in there, we got good bacteria that's kind of like consuming sugars from the cabbage. Let's see, I think it's good already. And it's like starting to, there's like a lacto fermentation, and then the salt that we added is basically keeping the bad bacteria in control. Okay, so also if some of this cabbage is floating to the surface, we're gonna have some bad bacteria from the air kind of like starting to work on that cabbage on the surface, and you'll see a little bit of mold. I mean, that's gonna happen anyway, but you know what you can do, you can remove it and then submerge the rest of the cabbage again. So I'm gonna find a rock to keep it. This is like super compacted in there. 6 cabbages, that's gonna be good for quite a while. In the next video, I'm gonna show you with red cabbage. It's basically like the same thing. I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna do it in a jar. This one, basically, as you can see, it's kind of like loose, right? So there's air that's gonna escape as it's fermenting in there. So we're just gonna put this at room temperature, and it's gonna take between 20 to 30 days to be, to be of a good taste and be fermented, and then it would last in the fridge for quite a while if we keep on putting back into the fridge. So that was that. Look at that. Boom, done. So I did find a rock. I'm gonna wash it a little bit. It's getting dark in here. The rocks here are mostly granite, so they kind of crumble. Hopefully we won't get too much of that in our, you know what? I think I'm gonna try a small plate first, or even a bowl. Can see, is this bowl gonna fit in there? We wanna have it submerged so we don't get any of the funk on top. Let's see. This may work actually. Keeping most of the cabbage submerged. Let's see. I like to put a little, kitchen towel / dining napkin on top. I mean, that's all it is to it. And you'll see in the jar I'm doing a little different. So I didn't use the rock. I used a bowl. I think everybody has a bowl in their house. So I really like this Crocs. Pretty simple, right? I mean, cabbage is pretty cheap. Organic cabbage is pretty cheap when it's in season. When it's off season, which means past, June, between June and, October in Southern California, for example, where we at, when you buy organic cabbage, a lot of energy and a lot of resources were used to actually grow that cabbage, and or is imported, and you want to do local. Possibly you grow your own. Okay, there's the sauerkraut. This is happening, and I'm about to show you in the next video how to do in the jar with red cabbage this time.